Hey everyone, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are talking about disinformation because disinformation, if it targets a specific community, could swing an entire presidential election. This is fascinating, a little bit terrifying, and here's what's going on. Now, the Latino community in the upcoming U.S. presidential election is expected to play a critical role in battleground states, given the growing population and all of that. They are potentially swing voters in battleground states. So it's basically no wonder that advocacy groups, election security experts, and on are saying that material is circulating on social media platforms and online messaging apps that basically are pushing false conspiracies that echo larger disinformation campaigns that have been put out in English. Now, this misinformation effort, some of which actually reflect the QAnon conspiracy theory, are especially critical in Florida, that has a massive Latino population and is obviously a very critical swing state, where polling right now is showing that Joe Biden, the Democrat nominee, is actually running behind in numbers to Hillary Clinton in 2016 among Latino voters, meaning he has to fill that gap. That was a very critical state in the 2016 election. One example of this, according to NALEO, that's NALEO, which is a non-partisan nonprofit organization that facilitates Latino participation in American politics, basically said that there's a Facebook page called Cubanos por el Mundo, which basically makes false claims that the Cuban government is planning a caravan at the southern border of the United States to create a migratory crisis before the election to sabotage President Trump. There is no proof of this whatsoever that this is happening. A video posted by that Facebook page pushing this claim basically was shared more than 334 times in a single day and continued to climb. Other disinformation efforts have spread across Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp, which is a very popular messaging app among Latino immigrants because essentially it connects you around the world for free. And basically, the intent here is to misinform these communities about election security. Much of this disinformation is coming from, and I quote, one-off groups that are hard to trace and can spread rapidly through things like WhatsApp messages, and other platforms. And this is, again, according to NALEO. Now, online disinformation has spread into more mainstream Spanish news media as well in Florida. So, for example, an ad that ran in El Nuevo Herald, which is the Spanish language sister publication of the Miami Herald, included an insert on September 11 that claimed that American Jews support quote-unquote thieves and arsonists and equated Black Lives Matter protesters with Nazis. The newspaper later apologized and said it was investigating its business relationship with Libre, which is the company apparently behind this insert. South Florida's Radio Caracol had a similar incident last month, with the station issuing an apology after airing a half-hour segment of paid programming which included anti-Black and anti-Semitic rants. The aired message included claims that if Joe Biden, the Democrat, won the White House, it would mean that the United States would fall into a dictatorship of quote-unquote Jews and Blacks, according to Florida State Senator Annette Taddeo, who condemned, obviously, this entire thing on Twitter. Now, much of this disinformation targeting Latino voters has the intent to basically dissuade their participation in the election. And this is, again, according to researchers on this, including pushing unsubstantiated claims that vote by mail is not secure, or that the election system can be or has been hacked. Meaning, what's the point of voting if my vote's not going to count and all of that? That's what we're talking about here. Now, this disinformation is also targeting voters beyond Florida, although Florida obviously is an incredibly critical state with a large Hispanic population. Hector Sanchez, the director and CEO of Mi Familia Vota, said misinformation is already spreading in Arizona about mail-in voting and undocumented immigrants voting in the election, meaning these undocumented immigrants would vote and therefore invalidate the election in some way, shape, or form. Now, I know politics is a dirty business here, and I think it's absolutely awful to try and dissuade citizens from voting in a free election. And this is exactly what I'm talking about here. We saw, basically in 2016, sculpted and crafted ads looking at key geographic key geographic areas, such as pockets of Wisconsin, to try to swing the vote for President Trump as opposed to Hillary Clinton. And here we have a mis or disinformation campaign targeting critical voters in swing states with large Latino populations, and it's mostly flying under the radar, primarily because most of the United States speaks English. These things a lot of times are in Spanish and in Spanish-specific publications, which means that community in some way, shape, or form gets insulated from the general information that's out there in English. It would be the same living here in Chicago. We have a very healthy Korean area, like a Koreatown in Chicago, where you can get Korean publications. Korean is spoke very fluently, in the area, and by virtue of that, if they are looking, let's say, specifically at a targeted demographic and publishing in that, that would be a very serious issue as well. We have newspapers as well in Hindi and other languages, and so this is what we're talking about here. If we are seeing this literally incorrect information explode on Facebook, and they're doing basically nothing about this beyond the prophylactic things that I've mentioned in the past, that's a very serious issue. Politics, as I said, is dirty, but this is just despicable. And I hope that the people that are doing this eventually basically get some ethics. They get a soul. They look back on their lives and say, hey, we should not be doing this, because I think basically an election should stand on ideas. You should be voted for or against based on what you believe, and it should be an honest election. And that's a very hard thing, when the mud is flying left and right. And now it's targeting specific people that may not necessarily be as tuned in or as educated into the election by virtue of the sources that they are reading. And that is a very serious problem here. So I hope this goes away. I hope they figure out what this is, but that is just not cool at all, no matter who's doing it. And again, I don't care what side you're on. That's not cool for anybody. And so that is your news of the day. And I hope everybody has a good weekend. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.